Hi, everyone. The last time I did a video, I was basically talking about Eastern European Croatian rum, which was like an ersatz piece of confected neutral alcohol that barely deserved the name of rum at all. And of course, they never really did pretend that it was. But today I wanted to go back to one of my older rums, one of the reviews that I did way back in the day. I think this was around 2012, 2013, which I still have in my collection, the Diamond 1996 Velier. Nowadays, these have become collector's pieces, right? The old Veliers from the age of Veliers Demeraras, as I call them. And they basically put that company on the map in the way probably nothing else possibly could. Some people would say that the Coronis are the ones that did it, but for my money, it's always been these. For those who don't know the backstory, Velier did, or Luca Gargano did have a relationship with Yesu Prasad, the chairman of DDL at the time in Guyana. And as a consequence of that relationship, he was allowed sometimes to take his pick of certain selected barrels that they put in front of him. Like, he didn't just go into the warehouse and pick whatever he wanted and then bottle that. No. They gave him some and they said, okay, you can pick from these, I guess. Perhaps because they themselves didn't know what to do with it. And of course, from those simple beginnings became some of the classics of the rum age that happened between 2005 to about 2014, which was like the Albions, the LBIs, the Blairmonts, the Diamonds, as we see here, the Skeldon, the two Skeldons, 73 and 78, and of course the Port Morants from 72, 74, 75, and God knows however many others there are. But they essentially did put Velier on the map in a way probably nothing could. And of course, the emergent culture of bloggings helped quite a bit, whether it was from websites and then now later on with various tastings. And occasionally you can still find them in places like Whiskey Live, where they have all of these things on thing and you can buy them by the shot. They're too expensive to buy now, and I would never recommend that you do. I got this one in Berlin in 2012, I think it was. And at the time, you have to understand what the world was like, where 40% still ruled the roost, and you did get a few that were 43% or 46%, and agricoles were practically unknown. That, it was really that recent, 13 years ago, it really still was like that. Although in Europe, of course, they did have a more elevated sense of cask strength drinks and independent bottlers that did not exist in further west, like in Canada or the United States. And that's why the original review that I wrote back in 2012 or 2013, the way I started it was to say that, the makers of the Diamond 1996 Full Proof must have received no end of emails and letters and online posts about how the Albion 1994, which I had reviewed just before it, which was at 60.4%, was a sissy pink cupcake of a rum and meant for the week, and how they demanded something with a bit more torque in its trousers. So we got this one just shortly afterward, which is at 64.6 and has a mark on the barrels of SVW, which I believe was the Skeldon, but I could be wrong. But it probably came from the French Saval still, as far as I know. And Daniel Biondi apparently was the gentleman who still works for Velier to this day and was the one who selected the barrels. The point is, though, 64.6 was practically unheard of in those days. And to have something that tasted this good and this rich was an experience that elevated the entire category, or just jump-started it and gave it a real boost in a way that probably would have taken much longer to gestate if we hadn't had something like this. And okay, so backstory over the rum itself. Like I said, it came from 5 barrels at 64.6%. It's, deep mahogany in color. You know about the stark presentation that Velier was famous for. They almost pioneered this sort of simplicity in labeling, which I always liked. And, I'm going to go back and taste this thing and see whether my original review was any better or any worse than I feel about it now. Well, it's held up really well. It actually hasn't been open for a number of years. I tend to trot this out every now and then if somebody says he's interested or wants to take a taste of it. And I still have about half the bottle left, thank God. But man, there's a lot of rubber on this one, enough to call Trojan manufacturing facility running full out. But, it's sumptuous. It's deep. It's dark. It's unsweetened chocolate, a little bit bitter with hints of orange rind, jasmine blossom, just florals all over the place with this thing. nougat, caramel, molasses, licorice, camphor, and some medicinal overtones. The fruits tend to take their time coming out on this thing, but they do come eventually, and it just enriches the entire nose in a way that really is quite spectacular. And that comes into mm, that comes into focus really well once you taste it. I mean, okay, fine, 64.6%, it's going to hurt you a little bit. Not a whole lot. It's amazingly smooth for what it is, and the brown sugar and molasses come straight forward. I mean, it ravishes the throat, if you want to put it poetically, and it is so firm and deep and powerful. I mean, it could could shake the shag from my pipe, as I wrote in my in my review at the time. But it's amazingly tasty. It really is a beautiful rum. Some people might even say it's simple, but I think it's deceptive that way, because there's chocolate, there is caramel, there's vanilla, of course, anise, molasses, leather, and oak, although much less than you'd expect for a 15-year-old, because it was done in 1996 and then it was bottled in 2011. Then I got it a couple of years later, right? It has some marzipan, there's some faint red wine. I mean, it's just such a great rum to drink. I think I'm going to actually finish this. Now, it doesn't have that deep fruitiness of the Albion or that sort of Skeldon note that is almost like a Port Morant, but it's a good thing because it allows this rum to have a uniqueness that really goes well with all the other ones of the line that we've had from all the various other stills. The finish just goes on forever. It's long, it's lasting, no hate, no snarkiness. It's strong and heated and without end. And it closes things off with well-oiled leather, chocolate, marzipan, mint. Yeah, a little bit of mint, some red wine notes, fruits, of course, and a large dollop of caramel. So it's really, really nice and one of the best rums I've had. I think it didn't need to be weaker, and it wouldn't have hurt if it was stronger. But for what it is, it's really quite amazing. And I think that rums like this are now being made much, much more commonly. So we don't actually appreciate how to find something like this, even as little as 13 years ago, just changed my perspective on rums forever. And some people might think it's a little bit too strong. I think a lot of people are going to love it for exactly what it is, with or without knowing Velier's reputation in the Demerara field. But I think it's just like reggae, played at earth moving volumes from speakers like Young Fridge. And it really is one of the best rums I've ever had up to that point. I've had better since then, of course, many others, but this remains one of the touchstones of my personal drinking experience. And at 91 points, which is what I scored it, I think it really does deserve that. I was actually braced once at a German rum festival many years ago by somebody who said, "How on earth could you give this 91 points? What? You're so full of shit." And I said, maybe that was enthusiasm, but to have something this amazing that early in my rum career that changed my perspective on things, I think it deserves that price, that score for me alone. And I really wouldn't change it. In point of fact, I might actually give it a bit more now, 92 maybe. So yeah, if you're ever in my neighborhood and you want to try taste this thing and see whether you agree or you don't agree or whatever, by all means, give me a shout and pop over. The door's always open and the rum is still here. It's a nice piece of work, and I'm glad I'm able to kind of like remind you that it did once exist, and it still perhaps may one day be found in some rum store or in the Black Parrot in London or wherever else you drink your rums. I hope you find it one day. I know I was glad I did. And that's it for today. Thanks very much, everybody. Take care. Bye-bye.